Hi, Castan, you on now?
No?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Good day. Welcome wherever you're tuning in from, wherever part of the world. Welcome to the Equal Opportunity, and it's in collaboration with the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association. Now, this is a panel discussion that we're going to launch. We're going to do a couple of things today. We're going to launch a Pass the Ball challenge, and we're going to get into that a little later on and explain what it's all about. But the panel discussion today is racism in sport. And we call it the hard conversation. And as some of our panelists will say, it's a safe space. We are going to speak our truth. And we're going to hear some very interesting comments and experiences from people who have been exposed to racism in sport. And just to say the least, we have a clip that we want to show to you. But before we do that, I'm going to give you a bit of background information. Now, I don't know if some of you all or all of you all are football fans, but on Saturday, the 10th of July, 2021, the Trinidad and Tobago men's senior national football team, they faced off against Mexico in a Group A encounter of the 2021 CONCACAF Gold Cup. Now, after the referee did not call an alleged foul in the penalty box, we would have seen Mexico receiving a penalty kick. The fans of Mexico, their supporters, reacted by chanting racial slurs and hurled bottles at our soccer warriors. Now, the match was stopped several times by match referee, and he issued warnings to some of the players and, of course, the fans. He wanted to settle it down a bit. But instances like these are far too regular in the sport, and these is why we're having these sort of discussion to see if we could clamp down on racism in sport, racism on the whole. So I'm gonna let our IT guy give you a clip of that video, and we'll get into the panel discussion. Right. So you'd have seen just a bit of recap of what transpired at the World Cup. And of course, some of the games that Trinidad and Tobago tend to play with Mexico a couple years ago, where we drew 4-4 with them. We also saw some racial abuse coming Trinidad and Tobago's way. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to introduce our panelists for today's discussion. We're going to start with Marvin Phillips, senior men's goalkeeper, and he was also on the pitch on that day in the Gold Cup. We also have Alvin Jones, who is also a Trinidad and Tobago player in the defense. And we have a former captain, retired Kevin Jones. He's also one of our panelists. And we have Naomi Guerra. She's a female footballer for Trinidad and Tobago. Also, we have Dr. Crystal Jane Vasami, who's the Commissioner of Equal Opportunity Commission. She's also a psychologist in the field. We're going to start with the two players who were on the field that day when the racist chants were being chanted against them, against Trinidad and Tobago. We're going to get candid with the players. So first of all, we're going to get first-hand experiences from Marvin Phillip and Alvin Jones. We're going to start with Marvin. Can you walk us through your experience at that game and, obviously the aftermath on social media?
Good evening to everyone. Basically, both teams were at battle, deadlock at 0-0. So that somewhat frustrated the Mexican fans. We know how hostile they could be. Unfortunately, in around the 84th to 85th minute, the slurs started. It's something that was very disheartening, as a player. And what we just tend to try to ignore these things and move on as a player. It happened again in the 90th minute, and knowing that we were getting a result, we try not to amend it and just to move on till the end of the game.
All right, Alvin.
Game as well. Alvin could deal more with the after the game parts.
Okay, Alvin.
Yeah. For me, well, personally, it's actually my first time playing against Mexico. Was very excited to play against them. I know what they can give, so I think like we as players, that's the game we want to play, to test your ability. During the game, we had an accident with one of the key players. Was to me was a shoulder to shoulder. He clashed into Marvin, and he got a serious injury that ruled him out for the whole World Cup, unfortunately. But to me personally, I'll never go on a feeling to injure someone because we as footballers, that's our bread and butter. That's how we feed our family. So I will not want to do that to take on no food from anyone family more. The fans say that it was disrespectful. Some of the fans said I was clapping. They say all sorts of things, but for me, I was clapping, because it was just showing respect, for him to get off the field, and go to the hospital in good condition and hopefully gonna recover back to it. But unfortunately, he didn't get to play no more games. It was hard after that game. It was very hard for me mentally. Sort of the messages. My family, my personal family, my mom, my dad. They was worried with the messages. I was receiving. Was death threats. Even getting messages that they're on the way to the hotel. They have a hotel room number. So it was very hard for me mentally to stay focused because we had two more games for the tournament. For me, shocking was the morning after the game. While on the way to breakfast, 4 of us was walking going to breakfast. And had the Spanish guy, he walked straight up to me and he was working in the the hotel. He walked up to me for a picture. And that had me thinking, like if it's like is a regular guy just want a or if they that they play it must be up mentally. All sorts of things was running through my head. You know, security wise, the Trinidad and Tobago security, I thank them for taking front. They send one of the top security for us to be the head security in the hotel. I was really thankful for that. That eased plenty. Up to this day, I still, if I do post something on my social media, I still get messages from these fans. For me, it's it's not good. Some will just say it's a game. These South Americans, they're very passionate towards the game, but as we say, it have some things that we don't do. Some things fans they're not should be doing. And I think the fans they get away with things, some of the things easily.
Pretty intriguing stuff there, Alvin. Now I want to delve a little bit deeper, because we as fans, trying to we support the team, but we see you all go there for 90 plus minutes, and we expect nothing but the best, or at least the best effort from each and every time. But as you said, this had a mental and a very emotional impact on you. Can you say how do you get the fortitude to, as you said, you had other games to play and still, you want to give your best, but this is still weighing on your mind. How does it really affect you and Marvin? And we're going to get to Kenwin soon, because he had an experience in England. Of course, England, they are very, they could be very rowdy at times. Sometimes we say fans are very passionate. Now, there's no problem with being passionate, but passion and racism is two different things, and so let's get to Kenwin. Kenwin, can you give any experience? Have you ever experienced anything sort like this?
Good evening to all the viewers, and of course to all the panelists on board. Personally, the event that took place at this Gold Cup is nothing new, unfortunately. It is something that I think anyone who has played for Trinidad and Tobago in the CONCACAF competitions and FIFA competitions, it is something that we're used to encountering, whether we go to Mexico, whether we go to El Salvador, Guatemala. It is something that's been happening for years. It goes beyond the realm of sport. It goes beyond the realm of humanity. And also in England as well, I've had face-to-face encounters with people, whether it be players, fans, institutions, exiting racism, and of course, being retired for a few years. Even after that game at the Gold Cup this year, I was still subjected to racist abuse as well, and I wasn't playing. But as players, as I think as players from the Caribbean, Black players, we are somewhat conditioned to ignore these type of attacks, and we've seen it's been highlighted over the world over the last few years, but it's something that's been happening, and it is I think is a massive measure of ignorance. But saying that, the authorities, the heads of the different confederations, they need to actually put some meaningful measures in place so that it would at least stop at the scene of the crime, so to speak, and then forward from there with education to the general public, the fan base, and also to the players. Because if we go back to that clip where the referee was stopping the game because of the racist chants that were going on, you can see, first of all the Mexican players was not in the center circle. And the second time, I believe, you could see them asking questions. Why not? Because they want to get on with the game. But this is something that the fans are used to. They are used to it as well. So they are not going to see the need to stop the game because of it. I think only because of the threat of the match being abandoned. I think that is when, a couple of them understood what was taking place. But apart from that, they wanted to get on with the game as per usual, because this is something that continuously happens when they play against particularly the Black Caribbean teams, because you don't have this problem with Mexico when they play against the other international teams on the world stage.
All right, so we're going to set CONCACAF now. They said they use FIFA's 3-step protocol during the Gold Cup 2021. Now, this is a zero tolerance policy against racism and discrimination. Now, step 1 is to stop the game, which we saw they did that. Now, step 2 is to suspend the match. And step 3 is to abandon the match. Now, based on this information, we know that the officials, they didn't go beyond step 1, despite the continuing chants from the fans on the Mexican side. So we're going to invite all panelists to have a view on all we have said thus far. What do you think that the protocol should have been escalated by a step or 2? What are your views? We're going to start with Dr. Versame.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Before we go to the zero tolerance policy, I just want to touch on what Marvin and AJ said in terms of highlighting their experiences of racism. And one of the things that why the USC wanted to have this platform was so that we could hear the voices of our players and hear their experiences of racism and the impact it has on them. And when Marvin spoke and AJ spoke, I don't know if you all felt it, but I was really touched by it. You can sense a sense of vulnerability, and you can really empathize with what it is that they experienced. Marvin said that how he coped by trying to ignore it. And AJ, I got a sense that you feel very unsafe, not just for you, but for your family as well. And I think one of the things that happens with racism is that sense of uncertainty and confusion that happens. And I think, AJ, that is what you experienced. So for instance, when you said, the guy came up and he took that picture, you in your mind, you were thinking, well, what is his motive? What is his intention? So therefore it creates a sense of unsafety and a sense of threat, So I just want to say thank you so much for sharing that information, sharing your experiences. It's so important that you can voice what you said, so that we as people could validate your experiences and hear your voices, so that we could do something about it and also give you the support that you need to continue other football games. Carson, going back to the question that you said with the zero tolerance policy, if we have a policy, I think it's about looking at, well, what is the purpose of a policy? And the purpose of a policy is to provide guidelines to an organization so that they can achieve the desired outcome. And in this case, the desired outcome is no to racism, to stop racism. And if it is that a policy is not being followed through, I think it was only stopped at the first step of it. And if it is that a policy is not being followed through, it creates a sense of unsafety for our players, and therefore our players are left feeling unprotected. I think AJ mentioned that the Trinidad and Tobago police or security was there and helped create that sense of safety. But from my opinion, a policy is there to create safety and security and give that form of support. So in my opinion, I think that the policy should have been followed through to the end.
Interesting stuff here. Yuri, you're official with the TTFA. You have been on countless excursions with the team, whether it be beach football or whatever it is. Have you encountered any sort of racism from a managerial perspective? And also, based on what I've said thus far from Marvin and AJ experiences, and also Kenwin, what are your thoughts?
Hi, good evening, everybody. Firstly, I think if the rules were changed and the small Caribbean territories displayed that type of behavior in the stadium, I think most likely they would have done the entire protocol and maybe even quicker. As we all know, Mexico is a juggernaut in the CONCACAF region, and between Mexico and USA, I believe they are the bigger earning countries that bring value to CONCACAF. So the smaller territories, example, Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, they will never, in my view, get the same justice as these other territories in CONCACAF. And traveling beach soccer, especially in the Central American countries, as Kenwin and Alvin and them would know, same thing. You go into the territories, you have them under pressure, and the first thing they drop back on is, the racial slurs, homophobic chants. Many times it happens to Jamaica, Trinidad, all the Black Caribbean countries. The Spanish countries, they tend to get away a little bit because, they speak Spanish and they can answer them back in Spanish, that kind of thing. But most of the time, once a Caribbean territory has these countries under some stress, that's the first thing they drop back on.
And why do you think that is the first order of call for them to do? Why is being racist or doing racial things the first thing you want to do when you're under pressure, as you want to say, and when it's just a game,
I think it's a generic way of devaluing anybody. You call them a homophobic term, you devalue their humanity by calling them the N-word or anything that just devalue the person himself. For them to be thinking that maybe these people just do not like me and I'm less of a human being. So it might just be the easiest thing, in my view.
We're gonna bring in Naomi here. Naomi, obviously you've heard all that has been said thus far. I'm sure you're dying to let your voice be heard. What do you have to say about all of this?
My thoughts from looking on the game and all that. We all know you don't have full control over fans. They always have bantering and they will always do those kind of things to show whether be the players of the game and just so their team can have an upper hand. But when you cross the line of and you start to discriminate and you take it off the field and threaten people's personal life and all that, I think as Kenwin was saying, greater measures need to be put into place. Yes, they stopped the game and they tried to get it under control, but I guess more could have been done, and in the future, they should push for more to be done.
Push for more to be done. In pushing for more to be done, what is currently being done? Let's open the floor to anyone that wants to speak out. We see in the England game that, yes, we take the knee, we have a moment of silence before the game, but is that really enough? Is enough really being done to really stamp out racism? Because we could see we have other things, for example, the Super Cup, the Super League that they were trying to build, how quickly they eradicated that because it threatened their dollar. Why isn't the same urgency being met for racism in sports? Kenwin, you want to hear what you have to say?
To be honest, I'm sort of a extremist, especially where this is concerned. I think this has been going on way too long. We're in a state where we have social media, so the attacks come personally to players and to teams much quicker. But this is something that has been going on from however long. It is a scale of economics and humanity, where economics obviously outweigh the humanity in this. As you rightfully said, with the Super League, it happened within the week. You know, everything shut down. They talk about banning people, taking them to court, yada yada yada, and you know, it made me personally sit back and sort of it confirmed exactly, you know, what it really is in society in the realm of sport. You do not take humanity into consideration, because the regular fans, regardless, when it comes to sport, they want to see the end product. They want to see the players go out there and play and perform, the athletes go out there and win races, get their medals. They're not concerned with what the human being has to deal with on a regular basis. And when you talk about football and racism in sport, it is something that I think it needs extreme measures. When you look at, if you go back quite maybe 5, 8, 10 years, you would have had some Eastern European teams having, you know, being sanctioned for racist chants within the stadium. They would have gotten a meager fine of maybe 5,000 euros and would have to play 2 games behind closed doors, as they call it. But that does not solve the ignorance. It does not solve the problem, because it continues. Even when the players start taking the knee, me personally, I didn't agree with it, because you tend to find that we're conditioned into protesting peacefully, you know, within certain measures, so that we don't upset the masses. But no one has consideration for the human beings that are being affected. So yes, you can form some sort of process, but do it peacefully. Okay, we'll take the knee, but that slowly goes out the window. Nobody cares about the knee anymore. It's not going to highlight. When we're at the point we're past highlighting the problems, because 100% certain they know what the problems are. They know what's being done. A few days ago, a couple of days ago actually, there was a report from Twitter that said most of the racial or racist abuse that were going towards the England players were from England. So while they want to look at it as a global issue, with their own players, they are being racist. So when you perform, when you give them what they want, you are welcome. When it does not go in their favor, all of a sudden you're you're not truly British or English, you have such and such ties, and so on and so on. So the ignorance that is being applied, in my view, it's only because of the economic value of what they consider to be their game. But for me, players need to take a stand and, you know, go to some extremes, really and truthfully.
You say go to some extremes. What are some of the extremes you suggest or you think players could go? It's a safe space. You could say
it's not a matter about being safe. Me personally, I would walk off the field. I refuse to play. I mean, I had one instance in my career where I was a part of a team. It's well documented, and you know, some of my teammates, or a couple of them, they decided to break open my my locker, my personal space, wrap my clothes, a pig head within my clothes. And when I asked about it, obviously nobody said anything. Then it got to the point where I had to, you know, smash a couple car windows, expensive car at that. And then the events after that is what at that point troubled me the most. The manager of the team only called to find out if I had any religious views based on what happened, and that was it. They weren't concerned with how I felt, you know, if I've been wronged, that type of thing. After that, I had a friend call me because I refused to go and play the last match of the season because of that incident. I had a friend call me while they were there and told me, you know, they having a jog and they laughing about the situation. After that, you had at the end of the summer period, the only call that I got from the club was from the secretary to tell me that, you know, I've been fined 2 weeks' wages, plus I have to pay for the damage of the car. And the people that were involved, which were white players, by the way, the people that were involved, they were on suspended fines and punishment. So they were given the chance, if they would have done something again, then some sort of action would have been taken. Now, an issue as serious as this, to put them on suspended fines says something to me. It means that, okay, well, you don't actually care about me. I'm disposable, which is fair to find. Now, if I was really the extremist that I say that I am, I had, within the area that I was living in, I had countless numbers of imams from different mosques writing me to be able to handle the situation. Now, I don't know how they got my address. I don't know how they got my address, but these were the letters that I were receiving in numbers every day. They would like to handle the situation because my wife's surname at the time was Abdullah. So even though she tweeted about it, now they started now just hammering my mailbox, wanting to handle the situation. Of course, I didn't take that action because that would have turned out a different story. And again, I would have been in more trouble because I would have been inciting some sort of racial tension or that kind of stuff. But even the officials at the bodies that were put in place, they did nothing. So you have the club not doing anything. I was the only person that was disciplined. And then you have the PFA that is supposed to represent players in these matters, did absolutely nothing. So if us as players, as individuals, are looking for these bodies to actually, you know, have our backs and put sanctions in place and deal with the issues that are there, we're gonna have to wait a long time. So you should expect now players should be refusing to play, walking off the field. We've seen it happen to Mario Balotelli quite a few times. So, I mean, now is the time for action. All of these, you know, first step, second step that they are trying to toe the line with where fans are concerned because they don't want the majority of the fans to not support or to not buy the tickets or to not come to the games. They have to either put the economics at the top of the ladder or they put humanity at the top of the ladder.
And Kenwin, just to add there, strange enough, Marvin was in the game. I didn't think he played in that game against Mexico in 2015. And he was the goalkeeper in 2021. So that's like 6 years of the same type of behavior from Mexico. That game against Trinidad,
you know, but
4-4.
You're saying that, yes, I was there, but understand you're saying 6 years in between, right?
Mm-hmm.
CONCACAF is now taking steps after they followed UEFA and FIFA.
Yeah.
This has been happening for countless number of years. I could tell you now, the family of Ansel Elcock still get death threats up to this day.
I actually saw they put a picture of the two together.
Exactly.
Ansel Elcock and Alvin Jones.
Up to this day, we go to games in Central America and play against these teams in the stadiums. The referees, they are scared, or because most of the times you get Spanish-speaking referees, they try to force the game on when these things happen, and because they don't want to upset the home crowd. We get it when we're coming off the field. We get it when we get into the bus. You have to sometimes wait an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours before the bus is able to leave the stadium. because you have fans out there throwing stones and shouting whatever abuse. So this is not something that happened yesterday or 2 years ago. This is a recurring theme, and for them to come out now and put forward these light steps of, we're going to stop the game. If you all don't stop, we're going to stop it again. If you all don't stop, then we're going to suspend the match. If you all don't stop, then we're going to abandon the match. At this point in time in 2021, that is too much chances for something that has been going on for a number of years. So they need to start taking some harsher measures, putting some more serious protocols in place in order to protect the humanity of players.
Because I'm seeing bottles pelting, they throwing ice, they throwing coins, everything at Jovan Jones when he taking the corner kick. And the referee just said, play on.
It's the usual thing. But be sure if we do that in Trinidad and Tobago, we are going to get sanctioned to the hilt for that type of behavior.
I was just wondering, directed to Alvin Jones and Marvin Phillip, do you think it would have been helpful though if they did follow through with the protocol in that moment with Mexico? So do you think it would have helped, or is it that it wouldn't have made a difference?
For me personally, I don't think it would have helped because when I watched back, like some of the messages I was receiving, it was majority kids. But I think it's like they're like 50, 60, 70. And it was shocking for me. As we said earlier on, I believe that CONCACAF there has been too soft on the Mexico. Well, we don't get from USA, well, they'll be soft on Mexico. But for us as players, I think it's something that we all have to be hard on. Don't wait for it to happen to you to react. And that is something I learned personally, because I was in the MLS last year with the Black Lives Matter movement, and one of the key guys, wasn't it? He was my teammate, so I was gathering plenty information, and now it happened to me, and I get a clear picture on the racism, I saw it on TV with players, like I prepare for it, but as much as you prepare yourself for it, it will break you, because mentally it break me down. I thought I was prepared for it because I used to say that I don't believe like if I play a game, like if it happened to me, if it will break me, but it happened to me after the game and it mentally mashed me up. Like some of my teammates didn't realize, because when I was around them, I will put on a good face smiling, but inside I was hurt. Sometimes I go lie down and just get flashback on so many messages because there was so much messages coming in, sometimes calls and all, they was calling my Instagram, and that point in time I just had to tell log out and just leave it like that. But I think that both teams, that's just my personal review on it. I think the both teams should take, if something like that happen and the both teams, meaning the players should actually like come off the field, like it's a no. And until players start doing things like that, we will get an improvement on the result.
I'd just like to say something, I heard you guys talking about what could players do about the situation, and off the field. What I think could happen, I know it has a lot of like player associations and player committees that usually form. Like for instance, in some colleges after the Black Lives Matter movement and all that happened last year in the US, some schools they and athletes, they got a group together of from different sporting thing, and they got together and they had like meetings with each other of ways they could come up like to solve whatever it was going on at the moment. So I think having like a player association, some kind of committee can be one solution.
I want to ask the doctor something here. You know, we want to get the psychological part of it. You think the chance? Well, obviously we are hearing from Alvin how it affected him, but from a psychological perspective, doctor, how you feel this discrimination could affect players' performance, even just their normal livelihood, just walking on the street daily, doing their day to day. How can instances like these affect them? Is it a short-term thing or is it a long-term thing in your professional opinion?
Yes. So you know what you're asking is about how does race-based discrimination affect the performance of players, and you know race-based discrimination is a human rights violation, and therefore when that happens to a person, you know your psyche itself becomes threatened to fear. So there's a lot of fear that happens within the person, and it definitely, you know, some research shows that it affects their performance and their efficiency as well. So there was research done, and it showed that, you know, players perform better when players who experienced discrimination performed better when there were no fans in the stands. Right. So therefore it shows that there's a clear link that the behavior, racial behavior, definitely affects their performance in that moment. And, you know, it also affects persons in the long term as well. So if you have a pre-existing mental health condition, so for instance, if it is that you have depression or anxiety, a mood disorder, and then you experience racism, it heightens or it deepens that level of anxiety or depression. So you can have an existing mental health condition, experience racism, and therefore further develop depressive and anxiety symptoms. So there are like long-term effects with experiencing racism. There's also research that shows that it affects your physical health as well. So there's links between racism and, you know, experiencing racism and heart disease as well, right? And one of the things with racism and racism on the field and long-term effects is that you can also develop PTSD symptoms. So, you know, just hearing Alvin speak, I can tell that he's very traumatized, that it really affects his sense of safety. And, you know, every time he gets messages, he's re-triggered and reminded of that experience, which definitely could possibly affect him as well as other players, their psyche and their emotional well-being. And you would notice that there might be changes, difficulties in concentrating or focusing, feeling very hyper-vigilant, avoidance, so probably avoiding social media or avoiding people, withdrawing from people. All of these are signs of mental health concerns that could possibly happen.
And will you advise that, well, these players, they get some sort of counseling or something in order how to...
Definitely. Yes,
with it?
definitely. I mean, you're hearing Marvin and Alvin and even Kenwin speak. With Kenwin, I can tell that you're very seasoned, and it's kind of like you have this armor of protection and you've learned how to deal with it. And I guess that comes with years of experience of being in the field. But with Marvin and Alvin, I can really sense that sense of despair and helplessness. And definitely I would recommend that it's important to have like counseling and support. And it makes me wonder, like, did you all receive support like from on an individual basis or from your teams or management or any organizations?
Well, for me, I'll say the children that we are supporting, I get messages like, don't study them, can't touch you, things like that, where you know, like, but it's so, like, I'll say, like, some people don't know the effect it could have on you, you know, don't matter what, I think for me personally, don't matter what messages you get, like good or how they message you, it still belong to you, you know, when you lay down in bed and things go over, you know, these messages can't help, you know, because it's more negative than positive.
Yeah.
You know, so as I say, the I think for me personally, because I had a incident personally where after the Gold Cup, I went to spend some time with my brother, you know, in
Miami.
Miami, sorry, in Miami, and you know,
say it have like where that
can go and relax. And I actually went out. You know, when I reached there, it's like 3 fields. And when I reached there, like 2 of the fields was full with Spanish people. You know, and I tried to see
Trinidad and I had one. And right there mentally, it affect me. You know, like by the time I reach, when I saw the amount of Spanish, I didn't know what Spanish country they were from, if it was from Mexico, Guatemala, or where. But right there mentally, it played me, and like I kinda play. I went to play and I just didn't play. I just sit down and was just being observant. It just mentally, like that point in time, it mentally mashed me up. And right there, like in the future, like, it had me thinking like if I would feel welcome or safe in a Spanish environment. You know, so for me now, that's the biggest part for me right now, like for mentally, how I'll be or how I will act in a Spanish environment.
Yeah.
I think next time
I just
somebody
want to
try and
touch.
go ahead.
I just want to touch.
Yeah.
Touch on what the doctor was saying. You know, each individual is different. All right, and many times our association, we know what we are going to face. Kenwin rightfully said it a couple of days ago. We know what we are going to face, but it's what are we going to do about it? It's like we go into environment, and there's before you leave home, there's nothing we could do about it. We just go in there, try to see if we get a positive result and get back out there. But we know what we are going to face, and I think getting some psychology or some psychologists, I think it would help, but it may not help everyone. But as I say, everyone is different. Yeah. But I think getting that, because you could hear it with Alvin, he's definitely traumatized about the situation. So I definitely think we need psychologists to deal with some of these players on these issues.
Thank you, Marvin, for sharing that. I just want to touch on both on Marvin and Alvin. You know, Alvin, what you were speaking about there when you saw the Mexicans, when you went by your cousin, is that's a trigger, right? So it's a trigger that would have been associated with the trauma that you would have experienced in the Mexico match, right? And therapy could definitely help to work on those trauma symptoms that you're experiencing. And Marvin, you know, what you're talking about is personality factors. So, you know, it really depends on the player's personality. So for instance, if someone has like high self-esteem or high self-efficacy or high levels of confidence, chances are that experiencing racism will not necessarily affect their psyche, right? So one of the things is personality factors. Other mitigating factors could be support. So for instance, if you have a supportive family or friends, or the organization is giving you that psychological support and enhancing your skills to cope with the distress that you're experiencing or to regulate your emotions, those are again factors that helps you when you're on the field experiencing racism.
But for me, one of the questions I always ask myself, like, if next year Trinidad get a game against Mexico, we have to play Mexico in Mexico. If it's safe for me to go and play, like that is one of the questions I always ask myself. Like if I should pull out personality for my safety, or if when I go there it will be safe, or I will be welcome.
You know, funny you say that, right? When Ansel Elcock, of course, had the tackle with Blanco, his leg was broken or fractured. Don't want to make it sound too extreme. And he was out for some time. He received all his death threats and whatnot. And the next time we went to play Mexico in Mexico, he did not go. They left him home, of course, because it is a safety issue. And for himself also, it is a safety issue, because there's no way they could be finding your number in Trinidad and calling your phone and threatening you, family, and that type of stuff. And you're not in a position to be able to do anything. You are helpless because the powers that be, the association, they are not, you know, very confident in, or at that time, maybe now it's different. At that time, weren't confident in standing up to the challenge of pushing back, against the associations and the countries that committed the offense. So for you, it is a safe feeling to worry about that situation. It is real. I mean, I'm a bit different. I would go regardless because I used to use that energy to silence them again. I want to annoy them again because in my head, and this is real after going through years of this, I am not going to get swayed by the words. To me, if you want to be racist to a person, you have to be racist and mean it and willing to go to the extreme to see it through. That is how I define racism. I'm not swayed by what you can say from afar off or on social media and that type of thing. I want to know that, you know what, you are serious, you do not like me, let us sort it out. And that after that, we could say you could go however, because in England, as an 18-year-old, I went to play against a team by the name of Millwall. Now, in my team had a lot of Afro-English, African, Afro-Caribbean background players. And me as an 18-year-old, they're warning me, okay, well, we're going to play against Millwall. Down there, they're very racist. Now, the way they dealt with that is they go to play the match and they would laugh about, the things that the fans would be saying and some of the players would be saying. I was astonished. I mean, I got my revenge in the end. I scored, we win the game. But while going out on the field to warm up, you have fans leaning over the banisters and in the stairwells and shouting, monkey this, go back to where you come from. The N-word this, you only here in the country, go back to Africa. They don't know where you're from, but go back to Africa, this and that, the other. They have it from players on the field. I once had to protect my family from an encounter just walking in the city. So at that stage, building up with that, I was like, you know what, I come from where I come from. I believe in myself. I'm here for a reason. If anybody want to take it to the extreme of being racist and not liking me, we can sort it out. Other than that, when you sit behind a computer or a phone and write whatever you can, sometimes some of these people, are no disrespect to anybody out there, this could be a person in a wheelchair just being ignorant, thinking that they will say the worst things to try and get under your skin and to throw you off your game, but it is still a lot of ignorance, because at the end of the day, they are not really going to come up to you and say, well, I don't like you, go back to Africa. Most of the times, if they think you're a good player, what I've experienced in my life also is them bringing their family, asking for autographs, wanting to take pictures. And these are some of the same people that are abusing you behind the computer, behind the phone on a match day. So there's a huge level of ignorance out there with people. But for the fact of where the sport is concerned, when we are going to these matches and when we are in these environments, if the bigger associations are not taking measures to actually stamp it out the game, all they are doing is endorsing it.
And Kenwin, also, the media itself plays a huge role in this also. For the French national team, you will find black players doing well, the French international player, and as soon as that player does something bad in his personal life or on the field, the Algerian player that was born in France, of French descent, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the media also has the
usual
captains of the world. They have no role to play in that.
That is so true. the media plays a critical part in the racism. So we want to get to the history of racism in sport, from segregation to, what do you think? You think FIFA is the body for football? I know we really focusing on football a lot because we tend to see it a lot in football, but you think FIFA as the body is doing enough, really doing enough to clamp down on racism? We say yes, say no to racism. We make a poster, they make a banner, they might make a video, some players, they'll get some black players or players from different ethnicity. And yeah, we say no to racism. And I think basically just call it George. What do you think FIFA needs to do to show that they're serious about racism?
This goes back to what Ken was saying. Everybody take a kneel, and that's it.
Economics, humanity. That's what you have. Economics have a big part to play in it. If they were to go to the extremes of, having a team expelled from a competition, let's say for a year or 2 years, then that will bring about some change because it's a harsh measure. I've seen someone put in the chat about FIFA have their code, their disciplinary codes and all of that. Yeah. These things, as you can see by now, it is not affecting these FAs or these countries, these teams, because all you end up getting is a slap on the wrist.
You can imagine, Kenwin, if they did not have Mexico in the Gold Cup, TV ratings and all that down the drain.
So economics, humanity. They're not going to balance it out because the money matters more for what they're doing.
So if the money matters, right, are we fighting a losing cause? Because the money is always going to matter. And I think they're always going to choose the economics. So are we fighting a losing cause?
Well, I mean, if it walks like a duck, because that is the stage we're at. At the end of the day, right? You gave the perfect example earlier on in the discussion. European Super League, within a week, UEFA came out strongly, start saying they're going to find people and they're going to ban these clubs. The English Premier League say they're going to sanction the teams that were in it. They're going to, deduct points. They're going to harsh measures, because they were trying to get a way to put themselves in a position, put themselves in a position financially where they will have sustainability forever and ever, amen. Because they know that they were going to draw the crowds, they're going to draw the TV rights, the merchandise and everything. But for countless encounters of racism against players, different countries, different teams, under the same European banner, what has been done? Oh, we're going to fine you 15,000 euros. Play 2 games behind closed doors. And what? Club teams, oh, we're going to fine you 5,000 euros. 4 games behind closed doors. We just played for 2 years behind closed doors. So what? Is that going to stop it? It isn't.
And then also you have to look at the people who at the head in FIFA and CONCACAF who spearheading the anti-racism movement. I think like 2 years ago in Italy, they started this anti-racism movement, and the graphic itself was 3 different color monkeys. And when you look at the panel itself, was just Europeans. So how could they speak on behalf
I'm going to add to that, Yuri. When Mario Balotelli was racially abused by his own fans and the fans of the other team, his teammate said to him, maybe he should not have celebrated like that to incite anything. Football is a game of celebration. You score, you celebrate. He didn't put up any offensive sign to the team or anything like that. So if you're telling me that your own teammate, again, who is a European, he's white, if his mind as a player is conditioned like that, that you should toe, you know, a specific line in order not to incite that because, you know, it's your fault you're black. So please do not incite anything that will get them rowdy. What do you think is the mindset of the mass institutions? They are going to toe the line as well because, again, the money matters.
The money matters. Doctor, what is your view on this humanity and the economics?
You know, well, as a counseling psychologist, definitely I would be for the humanity. I think it's about, you know, when you're not just players, but you're human beings with thoughts and feelings. And it makes me wonder if, I mean, forgive my naivety about the FIFA and the policies and all these things, but I wonder if they're like multidisciplinary teams that not just looks at the economics, but looks at the well-being and of players and the effects of it. So I'm thinking, you know, if it is that it's only about economics, where does the social or the psychological and the emotional part comes in terms of looking after the players as humans? So I'm not sure if Yuri or Kenwin would know about that. Like, is there like a mediating body or somebody that, you know, that they can be accountable to or take responsibility in some sense?
Yuri, you know, I don't know if there's any independent board. And when I say independent, solely independent of the institutions they are, to actually have the power to be able to operate on their own. I do not believe that. You can have whatever disciplinary. If you have drugs in sport, yes, the disciplinary committee gonna come down hard at you. If you have now we're seeing
Betting.
You know, exactly, they're gonna come down on you. I'm seeing someone here putting up in the chat, in England, they have developed an equality and inclusion campaign organization within its primary school.
Primary focus.
Primary focus.
Yeah.
I'm just going to show you all the graphic here.
Oh yeah, that was it.
Right, yeah.
Or is that with a thumbs up as well? From the
Three monkeys and the two European guys who launched it.
Yeah, with a thumbs up as well.
thumbs up.
So,
with a thumbs up.
Mm.
So all of these campaigns, and I would say to the person that put any message about show racism, the red card, and kick it out. While I was in England, I was a part of those associations. Every month or so, kick it out actually. You know, everybody would have a t-shirt on with kick it out to wear for the warm-up for matches. Show racism, the red card. I've done countless campaigns with them about it. But
show racism and red card is Chaka Islap, right?
Yes, he's part of that. But you see, the thing is that they have a strong enough voice to, sorry for the cliche, voice their frustration on the matters. But having that translate into action for players is another story. So you can have all these associations and groups that are anti-racism or anti-racist chanting and behavior, but are they or do they have enough power to actually effect change? As much as they are there, they are trying to educate maybe the younger generation, but again, that is on a schedule, a timeline. So show racism or kick it out or any other institution might put on a campaign, maybe let's say for 6 months or for the year. They're going to appear at different schools in different districts for maybe, 1 week or a day in this school, a day in another school or whatever for a year. But after you've passed that first day in one school, and of course, they married or used the vehicle of football, that child or those children are going back home to where the ignorance is bred. So how do you counteract that? And too much responsibility is placed on the players. And I'm going to separate here, not the white players, the black players, to beg for respect for humanity. That can't happen. Why do I have to respect for you? Why do I have to beg for you to respect me as a human being? It's all good. You want me for my talent. When I do well, you're happy. But if I don't do well, as any other human being does, they will have good days and bad days. Why doesn't it result in a white player being called such and such name or whatever? It doesn't happen. So why is there now the responsibility on players to do such and such and to try and educate, try not to stir up any action? The only action that players have now, especially black players, is to just walk off, leave, do not play, because then you will have the backup of the legal system where you can take those matters to an authority for the land, not within the sport, but for the land where people will have to abide by. Now that makes it a different case. Your club can't sanction you for walking off because you're now facing a humanitarian issue. And if all these associations and these leagues and these clubs about the humanitarian effort, because all of them put on campaigns seeking social reform and social assistance and humanitarian efforts, now you're attacking me as a human being. So then I will have the backup of whether it be the UN or whoever, whatever laws exist in the land. But to continue to ask players to kneel and to wear a t-shirt and to go around and educate people about the issue of racism, it makes no sense. I am not going to beg you to respect me as a human being. You can say I'm not a good player, I'm not a good athlete, all day, every day, if you like. That is your right. You have a mouth and you can have an opinion. But I am not going to beg you to respect me as a human being. That should be your basic right. I am a human just like you. We all die the same, we bleed the same, we breathe the same.
And that is so true. There's another form of racism as well, where Naomi, I think she have a personal story on this one. Women of color, particularly, they see another form of racism that we see this very prevalent in the game today. Naomi, can you share the story with us as a woman of color in the game?
Hi. Yes, as a woman coming from the Caribbean, majority of us, we are Black. We going into different environments, whether it be in college or to play pro at the highest level. You enter environments where you are the minority. And for me, when I first went out to college, I went to like 2 different states that were predominantly white. I went to Mississippi and Ohio. And when I first went to Mississippi and I was telling people I went to Mississippi from Trinidad, they were like, why Mississippi? I was like, why not? They were like, you may probably face some sort of racism out there and all that. But what I did, I went to the coach of the one that was recruiting me, and I asked him, what is racism like out there? Because I have never encountered it before, because I'm from Trinidad, where we are majority Black. And he was like, he answered me in such a way that, once you're part of the team environment, will be welcoming, but the externalities, you probably will have to, try to block it out, basically. And when I got that information, I kind of knew what was getting into. And when I went to the team, I was like probably 1 out of the 2 Black people on the team. And then it had a couple other internationals that were there. And I have been have gotten some sort of racism towards me, whether it be subtle also on the field. When I got it on the field, one time I turned around and I basically, um, replied to them and went back on playing. And the other time I was like, I'll just ignore it and continue playing. Fans usually do those stuff to you to show you off the game. They go look you up on the internet and all that just to find out stuff about you to get into your head. And what I would say, there is some sort of struggle when you go into environment, because like I don't know about the culture. I gotta learn it. I gotta do all those sorts of things. And as a woman of color coming out to the Caribbean, I was unfamiliar with the environment. So I would say that you face some sort of hardship in certain situations that you may go into out there. Yeah.
We also see another form of racism where we see there's something called stacking, right? Stacking is defined as racial segregation by position, now, which is based on a player's perceived athleticism or intellectual decision making. Do you think racial stacking is prevalent in sport? And any of you, have you all been a victim of such racial stacking? Kenwin, I think you have been a victim of racial stacking. Right here in Trinidad, I think?
Not in Trinidad and Tobago, but in my international club career, I have been. I have been part of teams where, for as we call it, for the dogfight, we have a team mostly of Black players. When you do get some stability and in a position where you can drink champagne for some time, you see that slowly being changed. The contrast goes from dark to white very quickly. And I'll give you a little experience of mine. In 2010, playing at Stoke City, things going well, started every game. We got to the FA Cup final, things was rosy, did well that year. Come the next season, the beginning of 2011, they brought in some new players. Some of the players that were there before, some Black players, they got rid of them. Okay, you think it's the usual, bit of business. But in 2011, or the 2011-12 season, we had a separation of the team. Now, getting to the FA Cup final, being runners-up, we played against Man City. Man City, of course, won the league that year. So we ended up being in the Europa League at that time. Now, a few Black players, I had a Jamaican teammate. I also had a couple players with, Caribbean heritage somehow. And we used to sit in a group and really analyze the situation. In that 11-12 season, when it comes to playing games in the Premier League, most of us would not be in the squad, or you will have a few on the bench and you'll probably get like 2 minutes a game. Now, these are people that the season before, done so well for the club, got us the FA Cup final and all the bells and whistles. And then come that season, when it comes to the Premier League, we were either not in the squad or very few on the bench and getting very few minutes. But come the week, in the midweek, when we had to travel to Israel and travel to Ukraine and travel to Switzerland to play the European games, the team used to be mostly Black, and we never ever went with a full complement of players. We would always have the starting 11 and one substitute. To go these distances, to play these games, and then come back. When we come back, Premier League come on the weekend, very few of us would be in the squad. And that happened for an entire season. So when you say stacking is prevalent, I can tell you firsthand, it is.
That is And it keeps on showing that racism is coming from the head. That they're actually sacrificing good results, or better results, we should say, for their agenda. What is so, why I want to ask the doctor, what is so in the mind of a racist, right? What is so prevalent in their mind?
Sorry, I don't think the doctor would know what's in the mind of a racist.
No, well, from a psychological perspective, I don't know. Enlighten me, what do you think could be in the mind of a racist that is mentally wrong, or as they see it, mentally right? Because they see, because a racist maybe see that they're doing nothing wrong.
Yeah. If you think of it, Castor, a lot of persons who you never really meet a person that identifies that they're racial. And a lot of times it happens that it's unconscious, that meaning that they're not even aware that what they're doing or saying is, a racial comment or a racial slur or something hostile or derogatory. And sometimes they are aware as well. So there are two types. There's ones that, that they are aware of it, and therefore their intention is to cause harm. And, I guess mostly to cause harm to another person. And then there's some persons who don't do it. And if you think of it, we also have something called racial microaggressions. And sometimes racism doesn't just come across overtly, but it's in little slurs. So for instance, labeling someone or having certain stereotypes as well. And if sometimes we do it in our own, talk, and we allow it to happen. So I think sometimes it is intentional, but it's also unintentional. And sometimes it's there to cause harm, and sometimes it becomes part of the culture and it becomes part of the norm because nobody challenges it or calls them out and be like, you're being racial, or you're saying something that is racial to someone else.
So how can we get to a point where, okay, let's say I have a child and I'm a racist. Now I am training my child in the manner, this is the right way. Now remember, I'm a child, I'm taking my lead from my guardian, my parent, right? And how can you get into the mind of someone who has been embedded in them from birth to be racist? Because racism is something that you have to teach someone. Yeah. So you grow that child to be racist. Now, how can you, if they seek help, break that barrier and show them that, no, this is not good. This is not what you're doing. It's not right. It's very racist. Because some people, racism is second nature to some people. It's the only thing they know.
Yeah, and Caston, there is a valid point in the sense that, children, babies, they're not born racial. You're not born racial. You're conditioned to be racial. And that has a lot to do with your parenting, with parenting and your social upbringing. Right? So you're not born as a racial person, you're conditioned to be that way. And that's based on parenting, and it's also based on learned behavior. And I think it is about having respect. Cameron spoke about it a bit before, but it's about respect for human beings, respect for another person, and the ability to tolerate difference. One of the things, you can't talk about racism without talking about difference and the ability to tolerate differences, or the creation of artificial differences. So I think if we go back to the values of what does it mean to be a human, and to practice values of love and kindness and compassion and respect, I think it comes down to respect. Even if you don't like someone, you still respect them. And if you think race itself is based on something you can't change, it's innate in the sense that it's your biological features. And we all belong to racial group identities. So it's not something that we can change, but it's about having respect, respecting difference, and fostering that in children, having conversations with children and young people that, that you respect everyone equally and you include everyone to have a more inclusive society.
And they say in inclusive society, it's hard because we know sport brings people together and it promotes a sense of belonging and identity. Now, and this is at every level, at national level, whatever level you name it. It's about pride and unity, right? So if this is the case, is the conduct of fans a representative of the society? And if so, is there a good place to start? Where do we want to see the change? Where's a good place to start so we can see the change and get us through this connection?
And, you know, Caston, what you're speaking about there is achieving a sense of racial harmony, or, you know, promoting more anti-racial approaches. And as a psychologist, I think it begins with ourselves. I think it's about exploring and understanding our own experiences of racism. What does racism mean, and ways in which we can collude with it. So I think it's about each person taking personal responsibility, and you know, sports, it is a unifying experience. It helps bring people together, but it's also about taking personal responsibility and being mindful of how you're treating others, what you're saying towards others. And you can't talk about race as well without position of power, right? It's because there's always one group that is more dominant than the other. And I think it's about, you know, asking yourself, doing what we call a substitution test. And that is about, like, you know, asking, would I behave a certain way, or would I say the same things or make the same decisions if this person is of a different racial group identity to myself? And if it is that you notice that you're being, you know, having the feelings of hatred, or, you know, wanting to be unkind to another, therefore it's about taking responsibility and accountability for your own thoughts and behaviors as to why you're behaving that way. You know, Nelson Mandela, he says sport has this power. Sport is very powerful, and it has this ability to inspire others and unify others, and therefore it could be used as a catalyst of change. But I think it's more than just the players. I think it takes a multidisciplinary approach of using, you know, the coaches, organization leaders, people who are in positions of power to take responsibility, to be more positive and take more inclusive practices.
Inclusive practices.
I have a point. So in the US, they implement some certain things at the organizational level for schools, where they would try to offer scholarships to people of color to encourage them to come to, like, let's say, go to South and those kind of places. I guess that's from an organizational perspective of trying to encourage people or try to integrate and have people come together.
Okay, that's at least some things are being done. What we need to do, as all of what we have been saying, you know, what can be done to change each fan behavior at games? You know, we say harsher penalties, but are we just suppressing something by harsher penalties, suppressing the behavior, and then they leave the stadium and they be racist outside the stadium when the game is done, or be racist to there's another person on the street? You know what I mean? We want to just not just put a plaster on racism, but really stamp it out. And how can we get this done at every level possible? You know, how can we move from where we are now to where we want to be?
To be honest, right, as we're dealing with racism in sport, for the institution of sport, the first thing we can do at this present time, of course, is to exact the penalties and the measures to protect the sport itself, or the sanctity of the events, I would say. After that, it is down to the relevant associations to be educated, firstly, because you're going to have to condition them first. And then for them to also try to, using the sport and maybe the teams, to educate their fan base. And hopefully that fan base, that can then stretch to the homes of the individuals that tend to carry on with this type of behavior. We have to remember that as a sports person, as an athlete, which I think we are the ones that face the brunt of it, we can only do so much. I don't think it is our job to go out there and educate people about not being racist or having a different mentality. It is left to the bodies to use the sport to not only penalize the misbehavior of fans, but also to help in the promotion of education of their fans. And that is all the sport can do. Yes, sport has a reach, but at the same time, it extends also to wider society, the homes, government institutions, how seriously they take integrating of education on racism. Because let us be honest, the people that are racist, if you look at in our region, if you look at the Mexicans and Central Americans of sorts, to Caucasians, they get the same racism. They're looked as brown people, or whatever derogatory terms they call them beyond that. So it is like a passing on of the bully syndrome in a way, because they are now trying to pass it on to us.
Right.
And it is just a reflection of what is happening to them as well. So a more holistic effort about that education, I think, needs to happen. Of course, when we talk about the economics, that is usually equated with class. That brings about some ignorance and tends to spill over into racism, because for the Mexicos and the Costa Ricas, they see themselves in the sport above us. So that right there brings a class issue. And therefore, in the minds of such, it gives them the right to behave in any manner they feel like it, because they do get away with it. And at the end of the day, as the doc said, yes, Nelson Mandela said sport is a vehicle, but I believe sport was only a gateway. At the point in time that he said it, he knew that the sport was a way for them to first zone in on, yes, the players of their country, their mix, and that would have then spread to the rest of the country, that integration, understanding that we are all countrymen, we are all from one place, and we shouldn't see a divide, whether it is in sport or in society. But now we have gone long past that point. The volume of books in the library have grown. The scenarios that integrate different races and cultures outside of sport, the events, Carnival is one of them. Now, I mean, in our society, we grew up with Indian descendants, German descendants, French descendants, Spanish descendants, British descendants, and we're in a melting pot of cultures. And we do say stuff that, on the wider world right now is viewed as racism, but according to our culture, we are okay with it, because it then becomes a term of endearment to someone else. It is not said in, maybe except in angry moments or disagreements, it is never said in any animosity. It's never said in any derogatory way. Again, I'll say, except when the rum come out and except when the anger come out, maybe you'll have that. But me personally, growing up in the school that I grew up in, I had all race in my secondary school. So that in itself prepared me for going out into the wider world. I then started to travel with junior national teams and senior national teams, being able to see different cultures and being exposed and knowing that, yeah, they're all people. At the end of the day, these are players, this country, oh, this country is nice, that country is nice. Look, they have this and that. People who are from different races, when they come to our country during our sporting events, during our cultural events, they tend to fall in love with the country, want to get to know more, want to stay here. Some people have stayed here. I know someone from Scotland who came here 22 years ago for one carnival, and never left. but that is them getting to be exposed to a different culture, not even just the partying culture, but the culture of people. So when we expose people, I think, more to different cultures, that is where you will be able to break down maybe 1 by 1, maybe 10 by 10, the minds of the institutionalized racists. Because bet your bottom dollar, they love different cultures, they love different culture foods, music, this and that, the other. But within the mass gatherings of them, they have to toe the line. Oh, we saying this is what we're going and do. We're doing this is what we're going and do. But the exposure to different cultures is what going to, I think, condition their minds or recondition their minds to humanity.
Also, Kenwin, just to add to that, when there are some places in the world that kind of isolated, or some people that are isolated in the countries that they live in. Like there are some Americans that never even left their state, you know, and that's all they know. Sometimes when it is you fly to another country, for example, you go to, all right, my team went to China. Some of the people that we encountered literally never saw someone of color. Far less for somebody with long dreads, far less for, you know, somebody who is 6'4", that kind of thing. So exposure also is something that also can, as Kenwin definitely said, could benefit and the fight against the racism especially. Because, you know, once somebody knows you as a human and not see you on Discovery, you know, that kind of thing, you know, it lends a voice, it lends a kind of human interaction with them.
And also, just like me going to Mississippi or Kenwin going to England, you know, that opens up doors for people not to be fearful to put themselves in those kind of environments, to actually go into those cultures and learn it too as well. So, and we could bring it back home, or we could do whatever we want with it.
You know, go ahead.
I think on a large scale, as I said before, racism, it is tied to economics and class. I can remember I went to Al Jazeera in the UAE for 6 months, and I could have seen the segregation where between Black Muslims and Arab or Middle Eastern or the lighter colored Muslims, I could have seen where it was prevalent. Now, if you're a sportsman or a football player, obviously you'll be earning a decent amount of money and seen in a different light. So the barriers of, or the separatism of class is not there anymore. But if you're a regular person in the street, the difference was very glaring. The place that you are in society, because of your economic standing, it was mind-blowing. And these are people, for want of better terms, are Black and brown, supposed to be of a, I don't want to say Muslim state, but a Muslim country. So even in their conditioning under the banner of religion or faith, they're supposed to have some type of unity. But within that spectrum, because of the economic class difference, you saw the separatism between citizens of the same country. So in a lot of ways, for me, in my experience, it depends on how fat your pocket is or how big your name is that allows you to be in a certain class and gives you the leeway to behave in a certain manner.
For example, Trinidad and Tobago versus the USA, when Alvin, you know, punished them. They came here and they were on their high horse and they posted pictures on Twitter and everything. And like about a week before, I think Fox bought the rights for the US for the World Cup. And they spent something like $400 million on the rights or something like that, in anticipation that they're gonna come to Trinidad and, you know, just beat us quick and go back home. And Alvin punished them. They lost 2-1.
Sweetest medicine.
And that was it. You know, they lost a huge amount of money on TV and that kind of thing because nobody was tuning in because
So
obviously nobody's there.
So you heard exactly what it is. You
Mhm.
spent money in the anticipation of gaining more money.
Yep.
And now that has been taken away. It then gets to the extreme of, which I believe is utmost ignorance.
So what we want to do, we want to give each panelist, because we're looking to wrap in a few moments, but we want to give each panelist, I say it all, but say what you want to say about racism, and you know, give a message to the people that are viewing or who will view this later down the road. We want to start with Naomi. Naomi, what you have to say about racism and how we could get rid of this scourge in society.
I just want to give a quick. So I saw a storyline on the NWSL page about Crystal Dunn. You know, she's one of the players of the U.S. Women's National Team, and it was saying, you know, she was cut from the 2015 squad, and you know she was out of it and depressed and such, and she met a fan, and like I think she was traveling back to go play Chelsea, and the fan brought a paper to her, a letter. And she read the letter and she said, if it's anybody she's playing for, it's for people who may look like her, you know. And I believe like her, like getting that inspirational letter, you know, helped her continue going to play for people like her. And what I believe is like, as I said before, you know, putting ourselves in a certain situation and environments to help open up doors for other people who come in behind us. I think that's a way that we could help with racism.
Type of racism. Yuri, you want to chime in next?
I am leaning towards Kenwin. You know, kneeling and stuff, it was good. I mean, for the period, everybody knows what the kneeling is. I personally have bad knees, so I can't kneel. And really and truly, hitting them where they pockets financially is a good way to get people's attention. If you can't respect me as a human, all right, respect money then. They will respect that point of view. The same way, next time USA come to Trinidad and Tobago, nobody's gonna put up anything on Twitter. Nobody's going to be on social media and, you know, bad talking the pitch and whatever. They're gonna come here very calm, very peaceful, and play the game because they don't want that to happen to them ever again. So I just want them to get hit with the pockets. Sanctions. What is good for David is good for Goliath.
I said, we're gonna go to Alvin. Alvin, of course, you know, I know you have a heavy heart. This is a touchy topic for you, you know. What can you tell the people out there, you know, based on your most recent experience, and you know, we moving forward for you?
Well, for me personally, I look at it as if Mexico was playing, so we say France, you know, like if they would have treated the France players like that, I don't believe they would have treated them like that. You know, it's all how they see us, you know, as a lower country, you know, a smaller country. So they look at us as nothing, you know. Why I want to leave with the people out there, don't wait until it happened to you to speak out or say something or act out, you know. Try and stop it, you know, by tweeting, you know, wearing a t-shirt, just try and spread the message. You know, it's not a good thing to be abused by racism. It can mash you up. So I just want to leave it with the people, you know, just don't wait for it to reach home to say something.
All right, thanks. Marvin was also a recipient of a recent abuse. What are your thoughts?
I just want to leave that, you know, all of us are the same, you know. We under the same sun. You know, if you cut us, we bleed the same color. You know, the arrogance in this, I just would like it to stop. You know, it's something definitely be taught, and it's only taught on one side of the coin, because for us growing up, this was never taught by us. We didn't know anything about this. You know, we grew up, we run with whoever, butt naked, the neighbor, East Indian, a Chinese, you know, all of us grew up together one, but the segregation is something that is taught. You know, I would like that to be stopped. You know, we are all under the same, I believe in all together as a human race. We all the same, so the segregation definitely needs to stop.
Okay, we're gonna go to Kenwin. I know you spoke a lot today. You gave some really hard-hitting points and experiences that you have been through. What you want to leave with us?
I might not be the best person to ask for my advice where this is concerned, because
You're radical.
like I say, I am very radical where that is concerned. As an individual, I respect every human being. So I have never got to the point where, you know, I have to be that ignorant and talk about you being of a different race. I don't see the need for it, you know. But for the authorities, for the people out there, I think it's a matter of just education, a matter of them, you know, more or less reconditioning their minds. Other than that, me personally, you know, I will fight if it really get down to being that serious. You know, in my mind, it isn't that serious because, again, it's words, and those words will never be able to sway me. I am a person, I like to learn and evolve on hard experiences, you know, because those are the things that actually tend to toughen you up. That's just me. But for everyone else, I think we need to drive home the points of not standing, first of all, for the abuse, for the discrimination, as players, of course, as an association, we need to fight and be able to protect our teams, different teams, because it could be, you know, senior men's, it could be senior women's, it could be under 15 men's, it could be anything. You know, we, as a bit of experience, you know, they have teams that went out there and played different countries, South American countries, Central American countries, and got peed on, got spat on, and that type of thing. And at that point in time, we just had to, you know, bow your heads and go away with it. We don't want to see, you know, a situation where there's violence going on and fights breaking out all the time. So I do think that for us as Trinbagonians, our association needs to join the fight and stand strong. Most of all, stand strong against the superpowers of our region. And, you know, hopefully once we start that trend, it will extend to the CFU region and, of course, hit to the core of the CONCACAF region. But it's something that we need to stand united against and to continue to push the rhetoric that we will not tolerate any of that behavior anymore.
Well said. Thank you very much. And last but certainly not least, Dr. Crystal Jane Versami. If this was a thesis piece for you, I think you'd have the perfect mixture because you have the radical on one side, you have Alvin who was, he said he was mashed up. It mashed him up for the lack of a better word. It really destroyed him. And we had different views. We were from the female. We had got some comments from on the live feed. From all our discussion today and everything that came out from all the experiences from all the panelists, what are your views, Docs?
Yeah. Before I believe I'd like to challenge, the persons who have economic and institutional power, challenge them in the sense of, being a bit more mindful of race and being more mindful of their own racial conditioning and that sense of privilege as well. Kenwin spoke about classism, and there's also colorism as well, based on the light your skin is. So I think it's about people being more aware of their the privileges that they have and the power that they have, and therefore challenging that behavior in more constructive ways. And as you can see today, both Kenwin, Marvin, and Alvin, they all had different responses, psychological responses to the impacts of racism. So therefore, racism affects persons very differently based on their personality characteristics. And lastly, I'd just like to say, that on a national context, if it is that you did experience or you have been a victim of racism and experience any form of discrimination, you can lodge a complaint with the Equal Opportunity Commission, and it would be addressed through conciliation, and some form of investigation would take place.
All right, thank you very much. I think I should reiterate that this is open to everyone. It doesn't have to be in sport. Racism is very prevalent in the workplace, right here in Trinidad and Tobago. So as the doctor said, if you feel you have been a victim of such, come into the EOC and lodge a complaint and just have a discussion so we could see, hear your case and see what can be done to fix this problem and give you some form of recourse. At this point in time, I want to bring this to a close, but it would be remiss of me to bring this to a close without letting you know our Pass the Ball Challenge. Now, you might be saying, what is Pass the Ball Challenge? Well, the Pass the Ball Challenge, this is the EOC and the TTFA, which we did today, football, as Trinidad and Tobago. We are inviting the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee to accept. Now, they have accepted the Pass the Ball Challenge, and the Pass the Ball Challenge is simple. It encourages people to adopt or pick up the mantle, not just privately, but publicly, and let's address racism. Let's have a round table discussion. It will be in collaboration with EOC, and we know how to help and set up everything for you if that is needed. We want other sporting bodies and other bodies just across Trinidad and Tobago to come together. Let's join and help one another. Let's speak about racism. Let's clamp this scourge out of our society. And each association or committee will nominate, and we want you all to use the hashtags. It's very simple hashtags. Pass the Ball Challenge TT, that's one. End Racism TT, that's the other one. Be the Change TT, that's the third one. The fourth and final one, We Stand Together TT. That's very important because, as Kenwin once said, and everybody else said, it's a great melting pot here in Trinidad and Tobago, and we have to live here together, and we have to be the change that we want to be. So, you do all of this and you tag EOC TT on all your social media platforms. It is hoped that this challenge will continue to provide a platform to raise awareness of racism faced by athletes, management teams, and a company, anything else. It can be employers and employees, anything at all. We want to raise awareness and get this out. And we want to use sport as a vehicle to do so, because sports supposed to unify, not supposed to divide us. And that is the message we want to get across at the EOC. Let's get racism out. So should any organization or group require assistance with participating in this challenge, it's easy. Contact the EOC and we will provide a template and necessary guidance. I must say thank you very much, Naomi Guerra, Kenwin Jones, Crystal Jane Versami, Marvin Phillip, Alvin Jones, and Yuri Chapman. And for all of you that were online watching us and will watch this in the, I will call it the rebroadcast, because it will live on online, and we will have more discussions on racism and other topics coming up. I want to say thank you very much for being a part, spending time with us here this afternoon into tonight. Be safe. Remember, observe all COVID protocols. We must send that point home as well. You know, everyone here, you see, we're without masks, but there are nobody in our company. So if you're wondering why we don't have one mask, it's very safe. So I want to wish you all the best. Stay safe and God bless.